Welcome to Angels and Seerstones presents Demons and Pendulums, a podcast on Chad Daybell and the teachings that led to the murders of J.J. Vallow, Tylee Ryan, Charles Vallow, and Tammy Daybell. I'm Chris Blythe. I'm a folklore professor from Brigham Young University, and I study Latter-day Saint stories and beliefs. The goal of this limited series is to contextualize Daybell's ideas that led to this disturbing chain of events. Last time we left off discussing Chad's theology of demons and evil spirits. Today, we are moving on to Chad's other theological preoccupation, reincarnation. I thought I was going to cover this whole topic in one episode, but I've decided to cover it in two. So this episode is on Chad Daybell's understanding of past lives, and our next episode is about how Daybell learned these ideas. To donate, you can Venmo us at Angels and Seerstones. Christine and I feel incredibly supported. You are ensuring the future of our program. We often associate reincarnation with Eastern religion, with Hinduism and Buddhism, but many people who identify as Christians also believe in reincarnation. In 2021, a Pew poll found that 38% of Catholics and 26% of Protestants profess to believe in reincarnation. And guys, if you believe in reincarnation, the obvious question is who you were before this life. There's a marketplace for Americans seeking to know just who they were, and many psychics eager to supply this knowledge. American interest in their past lives began in the 19th century United States with the rise of spiritualism, mediums who claimed to be able to talk to your dead loved ones. And initially, that's all they claimed. But in time, they began to embrace aspects of Swedenborgian religion as well as Eastern religion. We call the very similar constellation of beliefs, believers, and institutions today the New Age. But again, these beliefs have bled into the broader American culture. When you sit down with a medium or psychic, you probably don't think of yourself as an adherent of spiritualism at all. In the fall of 2000, I went to New Orleans with some fraternity brothers. I was not active in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints at the time, but still believed deeply in my religion. Some of my buddies wanted to go sit down with a psychic. I can't imagine doing this today, but in my early 20s, I thought that sounded like great fun. We saw a woman at a table in the French Quarter and sat down to get a reading. She told us that for $15, she could tell us 3 past lives. Who was I? I was a Roman senator, a British prince, and a friend of Benjamin Franklin's. I don't remember being too excited by this news. The woman tried to capture my interest, though, by telling me that she never met someone associated with Franklin. It was usually George Washington. And to make matters more interesting, she told me there was a portrait of me as a prince in some attic in England. She was doing her best to sell it as a thrilling revelation. In truth, it probably wasn't the best use of $15. But I'm not alone in this. Many tourists have gotten inexpensive psychic readings in New Orleans. Some more serious believers might find a psychic in their hometown or find someone on the web who claims to have these spiritual gifts. When I think of past lives in American culture, I think of the 1991 movie Defending Your Life, featuring Albert Brooks and Meryl Streep. The movie takes place in the afterlife where individuals are trying to avoid reincarnation. Brooks and Streep will visit something called the Pavilion of Past Lives, where they enter a booth to see 5 of their previous incarnations via a hologram.
Welcome to the Past Lives Pavilion. In a moment, you will be asked to place your right hand on the plate next to you. An image of yourself in a former life will soon appear. When you have seen enough, simply remove your hand from the plate. Since we want to be fair and accommodate everyone, you will be limited to 5 past lives only. Thank you.
But my point is that whether we as Americans, know about past lives from New Age gurus we've read or from mediums we've seen. We might also know it from popular culture. Millions believe in reincarnation. It's not such a bizarre belief, but it has never been an official doctrine in the Latter-day Saint religion. There have been plenty of times where a Latter-day Saint schism or an individual theologian has speculated on how reincarnation fit into LDS thought. Next week, we'll get into all of that and figure out where Chad got his particular variation of reincarnation. But today, my goal is to explain how reincarnation functioned in his thought, how he used it to create and strengthen relationships, and ultimately to get people to do what he wanted them to do. In 2017, Chad Daybell was introduced to reincarnation, or what many Latter-day Saints call multiple mortal probations. Lauren Matthias from Hidden True Crime interviewed one of Chad's friends, Eric Smith, who explained Chad's conversion to this set of ideas. Let's play the clip.
But there's this one friend in particular that I was talking about. I'd go to his house and just kind of pitch this belief system to him. And a few weeks went by, maybe months, and he came back to me and was like, you know what? I've been researching and it's true. And I'm telling you, this guy was emotional and he's a big guy. And it was nice for me to have that validation from him. But anyway, he was on his own path and he was just telling me what he had learned and how he felt. It was true. He told me later a couple times that he pitched that to Chad, the whole belief system in multiple lives. And Chad at first denied it, refused it, didn't believe it. And then basically had the same experience as my friend. Some time goes by, I don't know, a month or two, 3 months maybe. And they're talking about it more at length. And Chad just dove in and he ate it up. And then maybe a few months later, by that time, I had started just asking the Lord questions about my own history, of who I've been, where I've lived. And you know, there's familiar patterns in scripture or history that I just identified with and just started asking my own questions about my own journey. And I started to get some insights about my own history, my own eternal history, right? Mm-hmm. And so I kind of shared notes with Chad, and he was getting things. He came to my house one day, and at this point, I think he did have his necklace that everybody talks about. He'd swing it and get his yes/no answers. And
interesting.
He validated some of what I had gotten on myself. And he sort of became this authority figure on all things multiple probations. If you want to know who you've been, you go to me, kind of thing. And he said at that first visit we had, I'm getting pretty good at this. I have some natural abilities in determining these things.
So when Daybell talks about reincarnation, he refers to multiple estates. That means levels, right? Multiple levels within reincarnation. Typically, Latter-day Saints speak of mortality as the second estate, believing that people existed before their birth as spirits in a first estate. Merging reincarnation with this idea, Daybell believed that there were additional states after mortality or the second estate. According to him, some of those around us have already been to Earth, passed the test, and have returned to progress and to help others along the way. This means when Daybell claimed a person was in their third estate, they had lived once before in mortality and once as a spirit. The fourth estate being is born 5 times on the earth. This is interesting. It's a little different than the other two. In each world they come to, they go through a second estate, third estate, and 3 lifetimes in their fourth estate. This is important because when Chad labeled someone at 4.1, for example, it meant he believed they would be reborn another 2 times in this world. The same was true, presumably, of the fifth estate. This has important implication for Chad's theology. For example, when Chad identified J.J. Vallow as a 4.2, he was predicting the child would at least live 1 further life. And in the most recent trial, it was revealed that Chad and Lori believed that J.J. would soon be reborn as the son of his brother, Colby, for his 4.3 estate. Likewise, Chad had designated Lori's deceased sister, Stacy, as a 4.2, but noted after her death, she had already graduated to a 4.3, meaning she'd been born again. According to Ian Pawlowski, Chad taught that reincarnation was a choice. One could choose not to be reborn and presumably experience a typical Latter-day Saint afterlife. Chad also taught that some individuals have lived on previous worlds. One of Lori Daybell's friends reported that Lori has been on 21 planets and Chad 31. Once he was a Holy Ghost. Chad has been 5 times on this earth and Lori has been 4. How mortalities on other worlds play into Daybell's conception of estates was not clear until recently, with the testimony of Zulema Pastenas in Chad Daybell's trial. She talked about how Chad believed in 5 creations occurring simultaneously. The 5th is Earth. You advance through the various estates not on just one planet, but potentially on all 5. Let's hear it in her words.
So Chad and Lori were teaching that in one realm of creations, there could be 5 different worlds to which one person could come to. So on this one, for example, it shows that there is one realm and one realm of creations on the left-hand side. And as you can see, it has 5 circles. So each one of those ones would be a world. And to the left, I have a arrow showing the spirit world. And one person could come to any of these worlds. And he had said that I had come to the 3rd world within this creation 5 times. To the 4th world, I had come 4 times. And to the 5th world, which will be the earth, which was also the lowest and the darkest of the worlds within this creation, that I had come to this earth 4 times.
On October 30th, 2018, Chad Daybell sent Lori Vallow a series of documents that include the details of his theology, providing the current world population of each of these various estates. The population numbers were given for what he called light spirits, but he claimed there were equal numbers of dark spirits. He explained that there were billions of second estate beings, 700,000 third estate men, and 2.3 million third estate women, 70,000 4.1 estate men, and 130,000 4.1 estate women, 7,000 4.2 estate men, and 13,000 4.2 estate women, and 700 4.3 men, and 1,300 4.3 women. In the 5th estate, there are only 133 men and 4 women in 5.1, 71 men and 0 women listed as 5.2, and 0 total in 5.3. There are only 5 men and 2 women currently living as 6th estate beings. Curiously, in the 3rd and 4th estate, there are many more women than there are men. Yet in the 5th estate, there are only 4 women total compared to the 204 men. What are all these numbers about? Are these 5th estate women on other creations? Does this have something to do with plural marriage? We just don't know. It'll be interesting if any of that discussion ever comes out. The truth is, in my interviews with those of Chad and Lori's inner circle, most people are saying things like, I just don't remember anymore. But we can speculate. Chad was interested in how his understanding of estates related to those who were leaders in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He explained that most Latter-day Saints were only in their first mortality, the 2nd estate. Local leaders, including bishops of congregations, were typically level 3. State presidents and general authorities were in one of their 4th estate mortalities. Apostles tended to be in level 5, however, and Chad says, quote, a few were level 6. Chad taught that there were, quote, a minimum of 9 mortal lives to become exalted, but more to become gods. This means that an individual has to be born on multiple worlds to fully progress. Along the way, people can, quote, choose to sign a light contract or dark contract for the next lifetime. Of course, we've talked about this in previous episodes. Individuals, by the time they're in their fourth estate, have aligned themselves with God or the devil, and they rarely switch sides. So that's the lowdown on Chad's theology of reincarnation. Now let's talk about how these ideas paved the way for his understanding of himself and those around him. I haven't been able to find any documents in which Chad Daybell explained his own past lives. However, Melanie Gibb has said that Chad had been born on this planet 5 times before his current lifetime. This would make him a 5.1 in his original scale, even though at some point it was probably more important that he was a multi-creation being. I've interviewed 2 people who Chad shared his own past life chart with. They agreed on 3 identities, and each offered one that the other didn't mention. Altogether, that's probably the 5 lifetimes we're looking for. First, Chad was Methuselah. In Genesis, Methuselah is Enoch's son and Noah's grandfather. He's just the 8th generation from Adam. Methuselah lived 969 years. He's the very oldest recorded among these ancient patriarchs who lived for centuries. And LDS thought his father Enoch was translated with his city. Remember, this means he was made immortal, and the entire city is taken off the planet. Methuselah remains as the representative of righteousness on the earth, and it's his posterity. Noah's going to come along to preserve humanity through the flood, this first apocalypse that wipes out the planet. So Methuselahs are at a time when individuals are being translated, at a time where the world is about to collapse. And it makes a lot of sense why this figure would be so attractive to Chad Daybell. In Chad's 3rd estate, he was the brother of Jesus Christ and one of the apostles, known as James the Just. It seems that Chad believed he was second in command in those days. According to Chad, whereas Jesus was the dispensation king, James the Just was the dispensation priest, and Peter was the dispensation prophet. I'm not going to explain all of that, but a dispensation is a time period in which God dispenses the gospel and authority, priesthood authority anew. And Daybell is saying he was second in charge right after Jesus. I'll explain this more in the book, of course, but this is a big deal. His lifetime as James has continued importance because this is just his major position in the past of the world, but also it's where he first is married to Lori Vallow. The significance of Chad having been Martin Luther is clear. Latter-day Saints don't consider themselves Protestants, but they believe the reformers were inspired. I doubt Chad knew about Luther's recommendation for people to kill a possessed child. We talked about this in episode 2, but this sure makes him a fitting previous incarnation for Chad Daybell. Einstein was a legendary intellectual. It would make sense for any of us, probably, to find a previous incarnation as Einstein appealing. For Chad, I wonder if it had something to do with those legends, those apocryphal legends of Einstein standing up to sort of intellectual authorities of his day, and usually in these legends to promote the reality of God against scientific atheism. For me, the most interesting figure that Chad claims to have been in the past is the most obscure, Robert Smith. He was the 3rd great-grandfather of Joseph Smith Jr., the founding prophet of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Robert was the first in the Smith line to immigrate from England. As we talk more about these other estate charts that Chad Daybell put together, I think it'll become clear how these mythic identities related to one another. Let's talk about Lori next. Lori was a 4.3, which meant she had lived 4 times before this life. In her 2nd estate, she was someone named Linnea. Now, there's no Linnea mentioned in the Bible, but Chad says she was a daughter of Methuselah and was married to the first millennium incarnation of Neil A. Maxwell. Maxwell was a much beloved Latter-day Saint apostle who passed away in 2004. It makes complete sense that Chad and Lori would consider it a great honor for her to have been married to him in a past life. However, Chad doesn't tell us who Neil A. Maxwell was. He was Methuselah. Lori was Linnea. He gives the specific names of different people, but doesn't mention Neil A. Maxwell's name here. I have a theory about why Chad would place Maxwell in this world. And that's because Neal A. Maxwell wrote a fictional story called The Enoch Letters, describing life in the city of Enoch from the perspective of a fictional man, named Mahijah. I wouldn't be surprised to learn that Chad thought Maxwell was Mahijah, but again, we don't know. In Laurie's next mortality, she was Illimari, a 5th century woman living in the last days of the Nephite civilization. For those unfamiliar with the Book of Mormon, the Nephites were one of 2 warring nations. The other was the Lamanites. Usually, but not always, it's the Nephites who are the more righteous of these groups. The gold plates that would become the Book of Mormon were passed down through the priests and kings of the Nephite people. Illimari was the wife of Moroni, the final Nephite prophet. And remember, Laurie had actually already come to the idea that she was married to Moroni in a past life before she ever met Chad. This is a case where Chad confirmed what someone already believed about their past lives. And he did this on another occasion too, when Eric Smith brought him his own chart we heard about earlier. Okay, moving on. In Laurie's next mortality, she was a 17th century woman, Mary French, the 3rd great-grandmother of Joseph Smith Jr., and married to, you guessed it, Robert Smith, who, as I already mentioned, was a previous incarnation of Chad Daybell. It's starting to come together here. Laurie's 4 previous past lives are Lania, Elena, Illimari, and Mary French. Chad's 5 previous past lives are Methuselah, James the Less, Martin Luther, Robert Smith, and Einstein. In 3 of his lifetimes, Chad Daybell was married to Laurie Vallow. In another, he was her father. This is key. Chad uses these revelations of past lives to construct relationships. He did this when he met Laurie for the first time, and he would continue to do this when he revealed other identities among the women in their inner circle. That's right. The key to the identities Chad provided is that they were all kin in previous lifetimes. Chad and Laurie spoke regularly of patriarchal priesthood. That means familial priesthood, priesthood about the family. And Chad and Laurie believed they were at the head of a special last days family. Every one of their disciples, for a better term, every one of their followers had been a child or grandchild of Chad and Laurie in a previous lifetime. In her second estate, Nicole Earle was the daughter of Lamech, who was one of Methuselah's sons, making her Chad's granddaughter and Laurie's niece. In her third estate, Nicole was the daughter of Jesus' half-brother, Judas, and Elena's sister, who was, of course, Laurie's incarnation at the time. So in this estate, Chad was her uncle and her brother-in-law. Serena Sharp, another woman among the 7 in their inner circle, learned that in her second estate, she was Lania's daughter, making her Methuselah's granddaughter. Again, that's Laurie's daughter and Chad's granddaughter. In her 4.1, like Nicole, she was Elena's sister. There are plenty of other examples. We have people who are descendants of Martin Luther or people connected to that Robert Smith, Mary French family as well. And often they have multiple links throughout the different lives. When Chad did other people's charts that weren't associated with his inner circle, he didn't link them to him in previous lives. They weren't connected to Methuselah. They weren't connected to Robert Smith and so on. These 7 women are special for some reason, and I have a theory why, but I'm going to make you wait for the book. When you look at the list of past lives that Chad developed, it becomes clear that he was establishing his own authority, but also Laurie's authority over the group. Just like he established a special relationship with Laurie by claiming that they were previously married as James and Elena, each of these charts were really claims that these people were part of his family and part of Laurie's family. All right, we're going to have to end here. Next time, I will tell you about where Chad got these ideas. It turns out there have been a number of fringe Latter-day Saint theologians who have been speculating on reincarnation for roughly 180 years.